help the handicapped of all ages in BC by getting your Kinwin tickets now. And a Merry Christmas to you all.
Webster is next on BCTV.
Good morning. The only discordant voice from the Liberal cabinet after the famous Lalonde-McEachern-Trudeau budget was Monique Begin. And Monique Begin was most unhappy with the fact that she faces perhaps cutback in health and welfare services in Canada. That's the way I read it. We'll see what she says a little later. And also for light entertainment this morning, we've got none other than the former Liberal, still a rancher, by the name of Jack Horner, now quietly back in his own little corner, savagely branding many of his former colleagues and political friends. And then later in the program, we're going to talk to a former economic advisor to Nixon, of all people, an American economist, formerly a Canadian, called David Henderson. But first for Monique Begin and the doctors, etc., after the break. Social inequality is evident in this country, and I think we'll get from Monique Begin this morning just how socially unequal the budget of your leader and your cabinet colleagues was. What's wrong with that budget from your point of view as Minister of Health and Welfare?
First, you're talking to the politician in me, so let me first say that I think it's far less bad than the Conservative budget that we defeated. I thought that one was far more unequal.
That budget is long gone. They were defeated. They're out the picture.
Okay.
You're in charge of the money. You said...
No, I'm not in charge of the money. I'm the biggest spender, and that's my problem.
Your
and
government is in charge of the money.
I represent those who want money. In a world, in Canada, where the economy is tight, there's nothing yet wrong with the budget in that there's no cuts to the programs I represent, for instance, but there is a dream of cuts. And the dream of cuts, I'm not sure I agree with if it's in health and welfare.
In other words, you're afraid that they're going to cut your budgets.
Exactly.
Did you not say after the budget that you are $750 million short of what you want to do for people at a time when your government is creating a kind of phony $4 billion Western Development Fund? Does that not make you very unhappy?
Can I speak of the first before the second? Call it the Western Development, I'm speaking of the second point. Call it the Western Development Fund or not, it remains that lots of departments did not invest in the West, I think, what they should have invested. Federal departments, starting with transportation, name it. I really believe that. You can do it directly from the regular budget of these departments. You can do where there is no more money than in others, or you can do it by special fund. That's not relevant provided the investments are made. Back to my problem. I think that the dream of cutting into social programs is back to the neoconservatism that we witnessed 2.5 years ago, which I thought was dead. Bon, obviously it isn't dead. So I suppose it's the last battle to decide if we are going to keep universal family allowances and old age pensions or to kill them altogether. I'm in favor of keeping them. But that decision hasn't been made. Now, for the old, I do need 700...
A decision has not been made to keep what? Universal old age pension?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should say in public opinion, once and for all, in order that we stop talking of it. Thanks for making me correct that. No, the cabinet position is to keep universal family allowances and old age pensions.
Did you?
I still need 700 and something million for the seniors alone, those who fall on the supplement, like in BC, it's more than 50% of all your seniors. They are on welfare. We don't call it welfare. That's what it means. But I knew I couldn't get that right now because I just got 500 million.
Did you
I
not
need
say,
one more shot of money.
Did you not say that many of your cabinet colleagues don't believe there are old people who can't buy enough food to keep themselves healthy?
Yes, but I also said, and I don't know if that was reported in the same conversation, that in that they reflect perfectly the vast majority of Canadians. They don't see poverty anymore, so they don't believe it, and especially the seniors. They don't think the seniors miss anything.
So I get you right. Are you saying that your cabinet colleagues do not see or believe that there is poverty among seniors all across this country?
I said that many of my colleagues in cabinet, reflecting perfectly their neighbors and other Canadians, did not know, and because of that, had great difficulty imagining or believing that seniors can live in authentic poverty in Canada, which is true, by the way. In cities like Vancouver, it's true.
And your colleagues also believe that to be on any kind of welfare, including GIS, is to be a failure.
That's me who says that. My colleagues never speak like that. It's my view of things. It's worth what it's worth. That today in Canada, maybe a little more in parts of Canada like here where it's booming and in expansion. Compassion tends to disappear, and because the free enterprise, etc., has to do with winners, those who are not winners are considered losers and just become failures. And those who handicapped, those who need money, seniors who don't have enough incomes and all of that, becomes losers. It's like a society thing I'm trying to describe.
You make it sound as if you don't belong in this cabinet at all, because you said too.
It's not my cabinet colleague who say that. It's me, Monique Begin. That's what I feel.
But
it's
your
my view
cabinet
of
colleagues
things.
don't agree with you.
They don't talk like that. They don't talk with these words. These are my words.
All right, what are you going to do about what you described as the lousiest private pension system in the West, which is the way you described our private pension system?
I'll try to do my best, being pretty afraid of how big a challenge it is to try to change things, but we'll try.
What options
We're
have you
going
got?
to call, can I speak of the problem for a minute? The majority of Canadians, today, we're no longer talking of poverty. We're talking of the average Canadian, the person on the street in an office, in a store, who works and will retire at 65, thinking that her or his salary, retirement income, will be pretty close to the salary of the best last 5 years. Say they had the best, they have reached their biggest promotion, they have the good life they have always dreamt of. They become 55, they'll fall by more than half. They don't know that yet. We want to change that. Most Canadians who work don't have a private pension, a company pension. They don't have one. Those who have one are lucky if they're civil servants, federal, provincial, municipal, and mining people. Many mining people have a good pension. Past that point, generally speaking, pensions are lousy in Canada. They don't give survivors benefit.
Is it not a fact that we have two classes of people? Those with no pension or a lousy private pension, which is devaluated all the time.
Yes.
And then the favored people, the politicians, the civil servants at all levels, who have indexed pensions, and their pensions will double while the poor Canadians' pensions are halving. Is that not a fact?
Your interpretation is totally wrong,
No.
Deliberately.
No.
But the facts are right. Now, the pensions of civil servants, wherever they are excellent. They are those we want all of the Canadians to have. Now, they pay for that pension. They pay for that pension. Their employers and themselves contribute to a pension fund, invest it well.
We are the employers of the civil servants and the politicians who have in some cases, unlimited indexing, which in 6 years at today's rates will double their pensions. How can you say they pay for it?
No, it seems to me a creation of your mind, if I may dare say so. The employer, be it a government or a private employer, must contribute X, Y, Z to the pension fund. The employee does too. They contribute more
Monique,
than any private company.
You're getting, so do we as taxpayers, but you're getting away
No,
from
it's
it.
their money, it's their salary. They contribute more to the pot than no, not me, because I'm one of them, but that a employee in a company they pay very little in the pot. There won't be much at the other end.
Let me try again. Is it fair that a group of privileged Canadians employed by the taxpayer, whose resources seem to be endless because you can put his taxes up, should be indexing the pensions of one group of people, civil servants, while the other Canadian, his pension is halved by devaluation of the dollar?
I'm sorry, I will say something not popular. I totally disagree with your view. They do not steal you or me as taxpayers. They pay in a pot of their private pension, and it's well invested, and the profits become indexation. I want other Canadians to have the same thing.
All right, you can't get it. You can't even get the $750 million you need to improve your program.
That's from general taxation, and I won't get it immediately. I know that. I'll get it in 2 or 3 years when the economy picks up. Now, let's forget that problem of the public pension. It's the only problem with the public pension. Let's talk private pension. I'm saying to Canadians, employers and employees, wake up. It's abnormal that it's not portable. It's abnormal that it takes 10 years. Here, it's booming. It's booming everywhere in Vancouver. People change jobs often. After 10 years, some of them may have the chance to take the pension with them. That's just wrong. Where does it go? Who gets the employer's contribution?
He keeps it.
Bon, I want it to go back into the pot to faire des petits, to make babies, with money, I mean, and permit survivors' benefit for the widow.
But what are you going to do?
Some indexation.
Tell me how you're going to do this, please, after the break. After the break. After the break. One can't disagree with Monique Begin that there is unfairness in levels of pensions in this country. Are we agreed on that?
Yes.
All right. What are you going to do to force these employers with the lousy private pension plans, what are you going to do to force them to correct it?
But we'll first invite them to correct it instead of force them to correct it, because nobody has the power to force them. The federal government covers only 10% of all the workforce in the country, and the provinces cover the balance. But there are 10 provinces, so you want a joint approach. You want mobility to be protected. So we've called a national conference of all the players, the key players, union people, seniors, because they're those who know the flaws of today's pensions, employers, the pension industry. It's a big industry. Even if it's lousy pension, it's $45 billion. It's an industry of $45 billion. It could be double. They don't want to see the government come into the picture. Maybe they want to do it themselves. So we'll see their proposals, assess them, and then we'll have to make a decision jointly, the Minister of Finance, myself.
But did you not say that you perhaps would start a new Canada pension plan?
Why not?
Well,
I hope the private sector does it. We can also go the route of the British. They have a mixed system. I hope it's feasible. That we have to check. They have another layer of another Canada pension plan run by businessmen, by the way, which I think is an excellent idea. It's reinvested into risk capital, and those companies who have a good plan gets a certificate from the state and can opt out. So you respect what exists, and you give other people a pension in 2 years' time.
Okay, let's turn to Medicare. Do you agree with Emmett Hall that doctors should not have the right to opt out?
Yes, and I also agree with the other part of his sentence, that's of his recommendation, that they should get a fair process. They're like any other workers. They should get a fair process. It's not very popular to say that either, because of their big salaries, but that's not for me to judge.
The president of the BC Medical Association, a man with the name of Alec Mandeville, suggests to all doctors in BC that one day they might have to opt out to become private physicians. Otherwise, this will be heading towards a Marxist communist state. At the moment, are you considering legislation to prevent doctors from opting out of Medicare?
Can I correct one thing? Emmett Hall or myself never said they cannot opt out. What we don't want them to do, we don't want them to extra bill. They can be opted out if they wish. I don't give a damn.
They're free to opt out.
Of course, but they shouldn't be reimbursed then over the charges of everybody else, the charges laid down by the province.
Yeah, but you control.
So that's where we don't want,
But
we
you-
don't want extra billing.
You have the clout to say that if I opt out as a doctor, which I'm not, should I have any part of the scheme at all, or should I just be sent off to the corner?
I suppose you could get part of the scheme that applies to the others, but nothing more.
Extra billing, extra billing is not a major problem yet in British Columbia.
No, but you have lots of charges over, how do you call that? Charges over and above. Like people have to pay $5 here, $10 there, emergency, whatnot. That's wrong.
But that's part of the hospital
unacceptable.
scheme. That's a hospital scheme.
That's all Medicare. You see, the problem with Medicare in Canada, if I may say, and it varies a bit province by province, is that through different channels, the system is taking money away from the people who've already paid for it through their taxes. So things that are wrong, if I may say, according to Mr. Hall, premiums. BC has a premium system. I don't have that in my province. Why do we have premium system if you already pay through your taxes? So-called charges, over user fees of all sorts. You don't need that. That's just wrong because your rich people can afford to pay, and it's always your seniors, your mother on welfare, etc., who won't be able to pay the additional $5-10 here and there. And extra billing. Extra billing, I think, is not a major problem. It's not here in BC. It is in your neighbor province, for instance, a major problem. Bon, Dr. Mandeville is talking big words, but he is in a negotiating situation with the provincial government.
That's true.
He wants fair increase. Then there's nothing wrong with that.
However, you have the final control over what will happen to Medicare because you put up 50% of the money.
More than 50%.
More than 50%.
More than 50%. In practice, Justice Hall establishes, I wish I remembered the percentage for BC, but it's more than 50% in every province in Canada. And what he tells me to ban extra billing and make it essential to have binding arbitration. But if I do that, the month after, I cannot pay the provinces who haven't banned it. And he also tells me not to withhold payments. So I'm in a bind, if I may say. So we're supposed to learn to love each other.
Yeah, the binding arbitration would just give the doctors much more money.
No, not necessarily. It's like for anybody else. Of course, it's more money, that's for sure, because it goes with inflation.
Next question. What are you going to do about this abortion mess in this country? You have abortion in certain circumstances in the criminal code.
Right. We're going to keep it that way.
We have hospitals which supply abortion facilities. Then you have little hospital societies with extreme pro-lifers who say, we're not going to do any abortions in this hospital. You know, and they've been close to successful in some places in BC. How should that be handled? Supposing a committee does control a hospital and stops abortions, what is your position on that?
It's Rafe Mayer who should be sitting here and answering that, because it's completely provincial in application. We have set the law in the criminal code. It's surely not perfect, one way or the other, whatever people think.
Very woolly law.
But since the Badgley report, where it shows clearly that generally speaking, the people of Canada are split 50-50 on that. There's no way you can decide easily for the others on that. We will keep the law it is and would like to see it applied. But it's the provinces who apply the law. And I know the case you're referring to, it's the Surrey Hospital, I think.
As a liberated woman...
Can I say it should really be the community XYZ who comes to an equilibrium. You and I cannot decide that for them.
But it's quite intolerable that 500 women who qualify under the criminal code for an abortion, if the committee accepts the proposition, that they should have to flee from their community and jam into another hospital to get their abortion.
Of course it's wrong. It's against the law. The law isn't even applied.
Yeah. How do you feel about abortion yourself? Don't you think, as most women appear to do nowadays of the younger set, that it should be a woman's decision, not a hospital committee's decision?
First, what I feel personally has nothing to do with the situation in Canada. I feel it's a tragedy, wherever it happens, and in whatever case. I dislike very much those who say that women use abortion as a birth control method. I find that, I cannot be vulgar, but I don't accept that sort of flat statement because to my knowledge, that is never true for no woman, young or older. Other than that, we all know the tragedy it represents, and that's it, I suppose.
How about taking some telephone calls?
With pleasure.
To Monique Begin on Medicare. I hate taking calls on the abortion issue, but you'll get some after the break. To refer to a quotation from your master, Mr. Trudeau, from your Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau.
Yes, thanks.
In this trip, have you met any hysterical separatists in the West?
No.
Do you expect to?
No.
Do you consider it any kind of a problem, really?
The separatism in the West?
So-called.
Yes.
You do?
Of course I do. I come from Quebec. I know when pride of people is attacked that it does, it hurts people, it creates scars like physical, des blessures, real problems.
Wounds.
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 Thanks.
Bless
That's
you.
the word.
Tell me though, but why therefore did your government go out to attack the West?
We never did that. No, that's what we're trying, badly maybe, because we are not from the West, to explain viewpoints, others that could show that we do not attack the West, or the Western people.
Can you tell me if the people of Quebec were surprised by the vehemence of some of the reaction from the West?
Yes.
They were.
But unfortunately, we're still a bit too turned around ourselves in Quebec, you know. But yes, people were surprised. It's a discovery for them.
Go ahead to Monique Begin.
Hi, Monique. I wanted to say first that I think you're fantastic. I really like the way you handle the provinces. And number two, when a person is sent out of Canada for medical treatment, why do we have to pay?
I wish I knew the answer. It's so rare a case that just a minute.
Not that rare. From the province of British Columbia, there's about 7 children a year that I know of that are sent to the Mayo Clinic.
Well, doesn't the BC hospital...
Not all of it.
It pays part of it on a daily rate basis.
It pays the rate that they would pay to a hospital up here.
That's it.
Yeah, well...
Yes,
The full rate, like the hospital is billed out up here at X amount of dollars.
Okay, she doesn't know the specific answer.
No, the rules of the game in Canada is that you are paid back directly or to yourself, it depends on the province, directly or to the hospital, depends on the provinces, what the provinces would give if it was in Canada. The full price of the in Canada same circumstances. Mm-hmm. You are asking why we don't pay the full American price.
Well, this is what I'd like to know, because it's not that you want to go there, it's you're sent there because that's where it's done.
Because of a specialty. But on the other hand, you know, believe me, the only other opportunity which would be to open it up would be, in terms of managing the taxpayers' money, pretty crazy. That's what the British have done.
Yeah.
And they now have people coming to Britain to have any kind of surgery. And the Brits pay.
I know. We could go back
can't do that.
Okay, ma'am, enough on that problem. Go ahead from Powell River.
It's because you couldn't monitor it.
Yes, Mrs. Begin?
Yes?
I would like to ask you 2 questions in regards to the year 1981, the year of the disabled.
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
How much was spent, how much was spent on the logo?
For the year of the disabled.
I don't know, a small amount of money, but I don't know how much. The Committee for the Year of the Disabled was co-chaired by Percy Wickman of Edmonton and Yvonne Raymond of Montreal, has $1 million for grants to pilot projects of different sorts, and people can submit their projects right now. About $400,000, I think, on the whole publicity program, but I don't know the cost of the logo. I mean, they don't, I want to let them autonomous in their work,
okay,
and I'm sorry I don't know.
Okay, we know logos don't come cheap. Anyway, the second question is, dollar-wise, how much will each handicapped person gain in the year of the disabled?
Can you wait until we present the memo to Cabinet first? and give a chance to the interdepartmental committee of all the departments of Ottawa to give me their report in about 1 or 2 weeks as to what each of them will do, and will make the announcement during the year.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Madam, Mr. Webster. What about the thousands of people in sales or sales-related fields who have no pension schemes or pension forms by their employees at all? What does the government intend to do about that?
We would like to go at the reform of pensions, not for one sector, like not just for sales or services industries, but all across the country. We haven't decided yet, we can't decide before the conference has taken place at the end of March, if the private sector's offers will be enough, or if we'll have to impose a scheme to everybody in Canada. The life insurers right now are preparing models of pension funds which could apply to very small or medium-sized businesses, and many of the salespeople will fall in that category. Like, that's the challenge in Canada. You have lots of small employers.
It would be 5 years before you had such a scheme in place, though, wouldn't it?
If you rely on the private sector to do it all, if their offers are good, still it won't yield benefits until 20 years, because we'll have to wait for the plans to become mature.
Does that comfort you at all, caller?
No.
It does. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. See, he was happy. Otherwise, you'd talk all day. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Speak up.
Yes, I just heard you mentioning briefly about the family allowance and the old age pension. And there's one thing I've never agreed with at all is receiving family allowance. I was wondering, isn't there some sort of way that money could be paid and distributed to the old age pensioners?
She's saying that she
Okay.
kind of objects to family allowances being so universal. And
Okay,
did you not
okay,
at one
understand.
time have a scheme
Yes, the
to
child
restrict
tax
it?
credit.
Yeah,
yes.
the child tax credit.
Okay. I'm the Health and Welfare Minister. I one day received that portfolio. 2 programs only in Canada besides Medicare, the family allowance and the old age pension, are universal and go to every child or every seniors. Why would we change that sort of social contracts? All the family budgets are built on that. Unions bargain their pensions knowing there will be a sort of basic 15% they'll get from the old age universal pension. I think for most Canadians, it's the first time they'll see color of money coming from the government. They give all their life, they pay taxes. So why would you change that unless you change the budget of every other government program? I think it's a priority at the right place to have a little sum of money for each kid every year. Now it's taxable, which means the higher the income, some money comes back into the treasury. I think that's fair. But we won't increase it. We'll keep it the way it is. What we will increase, if we can, one day, is the child tax credit who goes to those really with small income.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes, yes. Come on.
About the pensions that you were referring to when you were talking about.
Put down your radio, and I'll do another short segment with Monique, so you can ask a question and a couple more from other people after the break. Can't see you. Go ahead to Monique Begin.
Oh, good morning, Monique.
Good morning.
You and Mr. Webster were talking about the contributory pension scheme of employers and employees, and Jack seemed to be rather doubtful about the fact that they were worked out very well. I'm on a contributory pension scheme. I have been for 5 years, and I know that the indexing, if it hadn't been for that, I'd be going pretty hungry right now.
Agreed.
My wife is on a pension scheme which is not indexed. She's been getting $131 for the last 5 years, which right now is about $65.
That's it.
So this sort of puts the onus on the government, if they're going to do this sort of thing, to get it moving pretty quickly.
Do you hear that? Ma'am?
Yes, yes, and now it's only one testimony of several we could have like that. I really believe it.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead to Monique Begin.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'll make a comment, first of all, on pension and ask a question on Medicare. On the pension issue, you make a great song and dance about how you pay the salary of civil servants. But you always forget the point that we, the public, pay your salary through advertising. And we pay for everything through one way or another, the public. And for example, my money now, which I pay for gasoline, is partly being used to finance the separatist movement and probably the Social Credit Party and Premier Lougheed too. So you always forget that point.
I don't see how your money for gas...
My contribution to goods and services I buy pays your salary. And I don't even get a choice as to how much I pay you.
Okay, what's your question?
The question on Medicare is to Madame Begin, is it not possible for the federal government to make as a condition for the sharing of costs that premiums be abolished and co-insurance and all these $5 and $10 things you were talking about?
We went 4 years ago to what's called block funding, by which we pay a lump sum of money to each province to give back to them the full control of decisions in the field of health in order that it answers the local needs, the provincial needs, the regional needs. We have broad conditions right now, but you see, that's the problem really, and Justice Hall does not recommend that we go back to what you suggest, which means also a sort of daily control, like we used to have. Before, we would reimburse 50 cents and a dollar on presentation of invoices, and we would really scrutinize that. We would have an army of civil servants checking everything. So we said, okay, that's wrong. The provinces should be fully in charge of their decision. I still believe it's the best arrangement. Now, if it deteriorates, but I don't have reasons to think it will deteriorate, because I think public opinion has now said, wait a minute, to their various governments, we want Medicare. So I suppose we're slowly going back to a real good free Medicare. So then, if we can keep block funding at the same time, it's the best system.
You want to
flexibility.
You want to see pressure in the provinces on the provincial schemes to wipe out user charges, extra billing, etc., etc.
Absolutely.
Thank
it's
you.
the only way.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Just a minute, took the wrong one. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you.
Hello?
Yes?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Hello? That's 4 hellos.
Okay, the Hall Commission, hello? The Hall Commission has been very silent on the issue of, oh, he's not listening.
No, wait,
Yes, he is.
just a moment, let me explain. Your television sound is up and it's driving you crazy.
Oh, do you want, my television is down, I turned it down.
All right, go ahead now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The Hall Commission is silent on the issue of community health. And every time the commission is appointed, it talks about medical care. I want to know what the federal government would like to do with respect to the issue of community health. Since the Hastings report, the physicians have opposed it, and the more physicians we have, the higher the cost of medical care.
Okay, good question.
It's all true, and the Hall Commission, to my knowledge, is not silent. It says very clearly that we must go the route of community clinics and prevention, because that's what you're talking about. But the Hall Commission was faced with first giving back its integrity to the classical Medicare, the curative side. You want to go one step ahead and do prevention. It is the objective of the government, and I hope we reach it.
Good, thank you very much. Take one more call. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Madame Bijan. Would you consider helping the mass of destitute injured workers suffering on welfare in BC and the other provinces across Canada fight for a Federal Workers' Compensation Act to be part of our new Constitution or the Charter of Rights?
Many provincial governments will have a fit at listening to that. But you know, no, but I don't laugh of it. And I think that all of us governments should know that many Canadians, forgetting the legalistic constitutional traditions and battles, want education to be national, and write us hundreds of letters, not because of power, who will get more power, but because of the best way to serve the public. And I suppose that idea, which I heard recently, of a federal workspeople compensation act, in order to recognize equal payments everywhere in the country, shows through a dream, because you cannot change that. The need for parallel programs in every province, for cooperation, that's what it shows.
But it's not practical to make equal workers' compensation pensions across the country because of the inequality in standards and wages.
Yes, but on the other hand, we make family allowances and pension the same for everybody.
Excuse me,
So,
if not just that, not so much equal payments, but what about a reciprocal agreement? Why should a person who's fighting an Ontario compensation case but living in British Columbia, why should they have to take their welfare check and try to fight a compensation case in Ontario that they should have?
It's a good point, ma'am.
A doctor or a compensation board in Ontario accept a qualified specialist results in from BC.
every province should be able, for Medicare or for workmen's compensation, to work out reciprocity arrangements between the provinces.
Thank you. So what I learned from you this morning basically is that you will fight for an improvement in the lousiest private pension schemes in the Western world.
I will do more than fight. I'll put all my heart and intelligence into that.
But you'll defend index pensions for civil servants to the very end.
Hoping that other Canadians will get the same.
My thanks to Monique Begin. Next, her former colleague for a short period, a fellow by the name of Jack Horner. The right brand or the wrong brand? He changed brands, but we'll find out about that after the break. I honestly thought Jack Horner, former Liberal cabinet minister, former Tory, Tory cabinet minister, would be so fed up with politics that when he finally was defeated, he'd throw away his memoirs. But you didn't, Jack. Why not?
Well, I always intended to write a book. I thought, and of course, after I got defeated, I thought, I guess like everybody, that I was being misunderstood, and I wanted people to understand me a little better.
Well, it's a kind of schizophrenic book, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. No.
Well, let me tell you why. Because it paints you as, on all occasions, an utterly reasonable and proper man, except when it comes to destroying your political colleagues and enemies over the years.
Oh, no, I don't destroy them. Oh, no, I just tell the people what they are. I'm not destroying them. You can't destroy, I don't tell you an untruth about them.
A reporter asked me after the 79 election, aren't you happy having Joe Clark as Prime Minister? Clark said...
No, he said a Westerner as Prime Minister.
I'm changing the quote.
I know you are.
Having a Westerner as Prime Minister. I've never known, say you, my reaction to be stronger. Clark, a Westerner. For heaven's sake, he can't even ride a horse. Now, is that not a snide remark?
Well, no, it paints vividly in my mind and in the reader's mind that Clark is in some question as to whether or not he's a true Westerner. You know, I paint vivid pictures with the English language. You paint vivid pictures on this program from time to time.
All right, what do you say of Dalton Camp in your book?
I say he's a good writer.
But?
I say he's a good writer, but he did some terrible things to the Conservative Party, and I could never quite understand why.
What do you say of Stanfield in your book?
Well,
the most modest, nice, gentle man who was ever almost Prime Minister of Canada.
Yes, that's right, never almost. I say to the Conservatives, look at what you did. In the Kennedy era, Jack Kennedy came into Canadian politics, he came on the television screen, people were interested in looking at him. What's this guy got to say? He's exciting, he looks exciting, I want to hear him. Then along came the making of the president, the making of Nixon, and everybody read the book. All you had to do was poll the people, give it to your front man, your good guy that they want to listen to. He'll tell the people what they want to hear, and you'll get elected. That was the concept. Here we put Stanfield in as a leader. You see a picture of Stanfield on TV, and you immediately go down, oh, he's dry looking. Oh, gosh, he can't talk. He looks terrible. And you don't want to listen to him. You see, the Conservative Party did the wrong thing in even choosing him. They did it because Dalton Camp pushed him. Why did Dalton Camp push him? I don't know. He put him through as a temporary leader, hoping that he would take over the leadership.
What about Diefenbaker? Give me your analysis of Diefenbaker.
Diefenbaker was a great guy. He grabbed people's hearts. He could grab your heart a mile away. He didn't care whether you had a head on your shoulders or not.
But he was a disaster as Prime Minister.
That's because he didn't relate to people's minds. He related to their hearts, their hopes, their emotions.
Tell me his mistakes, because you were involved in the Dump Dief campaign.
Oh, I wasn't involved. I defended Dief. Wait a minute. Don't get me wrong. I nearly got into a few fistfights. I wasn't such a big guy.
I apologize. I withdraw that. What was wrong with Dief?
Dief played, maybe it was because he was such a great jury lawyer, that he played to people's emotions, and he didn't really tend to relate to their minds. And when he came to be Prime Minister, he found he had to argue rationally with his cabinet ministers, that he saw them every day, and the emotions tend to wear thin, and it didn't stand up.
Looking back on dumping Dief, who was the principal evil person in that who really destroyed the Tory government?
Dalton Camp, no question about that. Dalton Camp, probably he had a lot of help of the cabinet ministers. I guess old George Nowland, who never wanted Dief for leader of the Conservative Party, would have been one of the instigators. George Hees and Davy Fulton, your British Columbian.
But back to your parallel with Kennedy, Dief filled the bill. Dief was a man whom you could make your leader, and you could merchandise him because you could.
Yeah, I know. Dief. I say in the book that Dief and Kennedy entered a new era of Canadian politics. We came into the 70s, and this is why I describe Clark so vividly in the book. We came into the 70s, and what are we doing? We're living high and we're all enjoying high salaries, but we're a little bit apprehensive about the future. Are we going to live as high tomorrow? Are we going to enjoy this high standard of living tomorrow? We were searching for strength. We were searching for somebody we could look to who would give us that degree of security. The Conservatives put up a weak-looking guy. He looks weak. No matter how strong he might sound, he looks weak.
Must he be dumped?
Certainly he must if they want to gain power. If they don't want to gain power, keep him.
All right, pretend that you're... Oh, are you a Conservative again?
No.
What are you now?
I would support the Liberal vehicle. I think a political party is a vehicle you use to serve your people. The Liberal Party, the Liberal vehicle, is still the best to serve Canada, to serve Alberta, to serve British Columbia.
Is it your pride that makes you say that?
No. Diefenbaker believed in one Canada. How many times did he say, "This will balkanize my country. I'm against the balkanization of my country"? Clark believes Canada is a community of communities. Clark and Ray Romano, the Attorney General in Saskatchewan, believe the same kind of a concept of Canada. Trudeau, whether Westerners like to admit it or not, says that Canada is one country. And I want to guarantee in the Constitution the free movement of goods and peoples. I can support that. That's the same thing I supported when I supported Diefenbaker.
All right, what do you think of the Lalonde energy budget and the cries and screams of protest from your good friend Peter Lougheed?
Well, Peter Lougheed is doing a lot of protesting because he's seeing power slip from his hands, which he thought he had, but he never had it. Ottawa has the ultimate power. The central government should have the ultimate power in a country. Lalonde is taxing them that's got, and the oil industry hasn't.
Are you in favor of this kind of backdoor nationalization of the oil companies?
It's not backdoor nationalization.
Front door.
Lougheed created two oil companies, Nova. You hear about it on your television screen. Over 50% of the directors are appointed by the Lougheed government. The Alberta Energy Corporation is a Lougheed creation in which the Alberta government controls 50% of the shares. So there, you have two oil companies there, only one in...
What do you think of Carl Nicholl and his advocacy of Western separatism because of the interference with the multinationals?
I think Carl Nicholl is doing a tremendous disservice to the oil industry. The oil industry has never been popular in a sense of the average bloke, and Carl Nicholl is epitomizing the rich guy who has made a fortune, and now he's going to make a little less of a fortune, perhaps, and he's going to have to pay a little more to Ottawa, and he's complaining. He looks very, very selfish. He looks very, very stout and fat and enjoyed a very high standard of living, and he should come off the television screen tomorrow.
Is there not a danger that the oil companies, those who are going to be affected, or perhaps even the CIA, will be in the West whipping up, don't laugh, whipping up separatism?
I think that people whipping up separatism, and certainly the oil companies are feeding this West-Fed organization led by a fellow in Edmonton. But
Knudsen or something.
Knudsen, yeah. They're feeding him. But it will only last a little while. It will tend to die down as they realize, A, governments will not give in to pressure groups, and that B, they can't separate.
I haven't asked you about Trudeau yet. I haven't really asked you about Clark either. Well, let's do Clark right now. Looking at Clark right now, and I think you're still a conservative. I think you were conned into becoming a Liberal cabinet minister. You were.
No, I wasn't.
Tell me the story.
Well, I tell the story in the book of the switch. I believed Western Canada wasn't getting listened to and wasn't getting heard around that cabinet table. I fought for years to be heard. All of a sudden, the Prime Minister, who I distrusted, who I didn't like, came to me and said, Horner, you're so smart. Sit around that cabinet table and tell us what we should be doing.
No, a better story than that. You've got to buy the book to read it, but the little man came to you first.
Oh, yes.
What little man?
Jimmy Coots.
And where did you have that kind of uneasy meeting?
In the inn in the province.
In Ottawa?
In Ottawa.
And what did he say to you?
He said, the Prime Minister has asked me to tell you that he thinks you can do more for your country in a different way, more for Western Canada in a different way.
And you were tempted because you hated Clark so much?
No, I was tempted because I hated Trudeau to tell Jimmy Coots to go plumb straight to hell, and I was tempted to flee the room.
But you didn't?
I didn't because I respected the office of Prime Minister. He was Prime Minister of my country, and my country was what I was concerned about, and I had to mentally restrain myself and say, look, he's the Prime Minister of your country. Whether you like him or not, you respect that office, you listen to what that office has to say.
So from becoming a disaffected Western Tory who distrusted and didn't like this man Trudeau at all, suddenly a knight in shining armor emerged from your body and you thought, I will join the team. Is that correct?
Well, Jack, I always felt, wrongly I suppose, that I was a knight in shining armor serving those Westerners and defending Western Canada.
When you go out among your old buddies in Alberta now, do they chat you up or do they put you in Coventry?
They treat me very politely. They still argue with me.
Coldly?
Not coldly, no. You can't treat Jack Horner coldly. You can treat him angrily, and you can treat him good-naturedly and pat him on the back and say, Jack, how's the world treating you now?
If they snub you, they'll know about it.
If they snub me, they'll be snubbed back.
Jack Horner with his own brand, my own brand, he says after the break. My Own Brand by Jack Horner. You told me you're a Liberal now.
I would use the Liberal Party as a vehicle to serve the people of Canada.
Will you fight in the next election?
No.
You won't?
No.
You've quit?
No, I haven't quit. I'm still concerned about my country, but fighting on
How
politics is only one way. 53, I think.
You wanted to be Prime Minister at one time.
I felt, yes, I had something to offer Canada as Prime Minister, yes.
Who sabotaged the leadership convention when you were going and Joe finished up as a leader? Who was the guy who got this weak-chinned man, as I think you described
I think
him?
it was Dalton Camp, Eddie Goodman, Bill Davis, Al Eagleson, the establishment of the Conservative Party.
The Eastern Mafia.
Yes, I guess so.
You'd call it.
Yeah.
Give me your two opinions of Trudeau for the purposes of a clip and a program later on. Jack Horner will now deliver two opinions of Pierre Trudeau. One when he despised him when he was in the Conservative caucus, and the other when he loved him when he was a Liberal cabinet minister. I'm talking about the two opinions.
Okay, first, I think Trudeau is smart, very clever. I think I and you and average people tend to be frightened and suspect somebody who we think is considerably bit smarter than we are. We like and trust a person we consider dumber than we are. We're not afraid of him. We pat him on the back and say, good old Joe, or good old Mike. We feel comfortable with somebody who's dumber than we are. We feel very suspicious with somebody who is we consider considerable bit smarter than we are, and I think that's the way I viewed Trudeau. I think that's the way a lot of people view Trudeau.
And when you became his confidant, oh, by the way, you tell a story in the book about Joe Clark embarrassing you greatly in public, perhaps breaking a confidence when you, just before your switch to the Liberals was announced.
Well, that was in caucus, really. Joe Clark embarrassed me by sending me a note, if that's what the point you're referring to.
Was there not a story in the next day?
Oh, yes,
Horner stripped of...
Oh, that was terrible, too, yes. Joe Clark phoned me and he said, well, while you're making up your mind, I should relieve you as temporarily as transportation critic. And I said, that's fine, Joe, that's okay, I can understand that, no problem. Well, then he issued a press release saying that I was stripped permanently of, and so on and so forth, which annoyed me greatly.
Was that the first tip, the first really sound tip that you were going to switch horses?
No, I think the first uneasy feeling I had is when I went in to see Clark, and I felt he had agreed to have Malone there. The three of us would sit down and discuss my future in Crowfoot. Malone wasn't there, and I said, where is he? Why isn't he here? And Joe said, I decided to meet with him separately and talk to you first. And I knew then that there was a double cross in the wind.
Now give me your opinion of Trudeau right now, after serving with him in the cabinet. He's a man for national unity. You like his bilingual policies and his entrenchment of the French language in the Bill of Rights, do you?
I think that Trudeau is a straight, honest individual. He doesn't try to slide away from the issues. He does believe, in order to make Canada a better place to live in, that the French Canadian must feel at home in all parts of Canada. He thinks that changing the Constitution the way he's suggesting will help that.
Do you think that?
But it also helps Western Canada. It also helps Western Canada. His concept of a plebiscite would give Western Canada more strength in our federation than they have now. The Constitution can be changed now with just action in Ottawa, by both houses in Ottawa. They can change the Constitution. If we brought it home without an amending formula, Ottawa could change it without consulting the provinces. If they bring it home with his suggested amending formula, the Victoria Conference, and if that's not satisfactory within 2 years, then have a plebiscite, then you could have 90% of Quebec and 90% of Ontario in that plebiscite. But they couldn't change it without 50% of Western Canada. That strengthens Western Canada's hands, not weakens it.
You approve, therefore, of the unilateral repatriation by the House of Commons in Britain, including his amendments and his Bill of Rights?
I think yes, because I see a balkanization of our country. That will limit that balkanization.
Who did you dislike most in all your political life? Dalton Camp?
Not really. I think if you asked me that same question a little different way, who was the politician who was the most disappointing, it'd have to be Stanfield. He had so many chances to win the ball game, and he dropped it every time.
I mean, you'd speak to him informally, it'd be delightful. Put him on television.
He had no imagination. Trudeau
would have made a good prime minister.
No, he would not.
Yes, he would.
No, he would not, and I say so in the book.
He had to be a better prime minister than Diefenbaker was.
No, he wouldn't have been as good. Dief had because he was the emotional man, he could see ahead. Stanfield couldn't see ahead. Trudeau rationalizes. Trudeau doesn't use emotion, he doesn't use humor, but he rationalized. He said, if you think this today, and you carry on that thinking, you're going to be over here tomorrow. Do you really want to be over here? And you say, no, I'm not. I didn't know I was going that way. And he does a program on you through rationalization that projects. Stanfield couldn't do either.
When will Trudeau quit?
Before the next election.
No doubt in your mind?
No doubt in my mind.
Is it true that a good friend of yours, a conservative called Don Mazankowski, former transportation minister, is now being wooed by the Coots-Trudeau axis in the same way that you were?
I've heard of this story for a couple of years, Jack. He may be wooed, but he will not cross the floor. For a number of reasons.
Stronger principles than yours?
No, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. My principles are as strong as anybody's.
You hated the Tories so much you couldn't resist jumping.
Oh, not a question of that. I viewed the Conservative Party as a vehicle I use. When the vehicle became, and I say this in the book, when the vehicle became a complete write-off, what's the use of me running around with a broken down truck? I might as well get in a new car.
Have you heard from Camp? Has he read the book?
No, I don't think so. I don't know whether he's read the book or not.
Didn't you send him an autographed copy?
No, I didn't.
Because you massacre him in the book.
No, I don't. No, I just say, why are you the mastermind? Ottawa.
The dust cover says, anyone who crosses him gets it in the jugular. Dalton Camp is massacred.
Oh, well, I don't do that. I just say Ottawa spends $60 million a year advertising. That's why advertising men are backroom politicians. They like to get in on that 15% of $60 million.
Read your quote about Joe Clark from the dust cover. Put your glasses. How old are you now?
53, I said.
You're too old for politics.
What would I hire him for? Asked Horner in '74. Clark might make it as a good sheep herder, but that's about all the good I can see in him. Well, that might insult you as a sheepman, but I couldn't see much else in him. I still can't. And history's proven me right on
I've got to take a one-shot segment of telephone calls with you,
All right,
Jack,
fine.
to see how many of your old friends were listening this morning. After the break. Well, Jack Horner can dish it out. He can also take it too. Go ahead to Jack Horner.
Yes. Hello.
That's you.
Hello.
Yes, I would like to find out. I have 4 things I'd like to say.
Say them.
Okay. One, what does Jack Horner classify as a Westerner?
Okay, that's
Well,
it.
all right. I mentioned this in the book.
2, with all, how can he run down all the people who fight and try to do things for the West? Trudeau does everything for the East.
Okay, next point, because you're going to be all day getting them out.
Okay, I'll just go with 3 then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, number 3, if Jack Horner wants so much for the East, why does he go back there and live there?
3 good points.
Oh,
Why don't you go back and live? Why don't you go back and live
well,
in
I
the
don't.
East?
I don't intend to live in the East. I'm a rancher, enjoying that life, and that's kind of a frivolous question. I certainly want things better for the West, and but Trudeau, Joe Clark, every one of them, all the national leaders have to pay attention to Central Canada because that's where the votes are. That's who elects them. Whether you or I like that or not, you have to be realistic and admit it. And I admit it. Now, what can we as Westerners do about it? Well, we can take a heck of a lot more care in who we send down there to represent us.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Horner, I
Yes.
certainly agree with what you said
Thank
about
you.
Mr. Trudeau, and I agree with you changing from the Tories to the Liberals.
Thank
and
you.
it's the most amazing thing. I'm not a Liberal, but I certainly agree that Mr. Trudeau is one of the smartest men in the country.
Thank you, ma'am. Don't need any comment on that. Go ahead from Victoria.
Mr. Webster, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Horner, good morning.
Good morning.
You're one of the most invigorating guests that Jack Webster's ever had on his program. I'm a
Thank you.
Winnipegger that's moved out here, and if you were to campaign tomorrow, I'd go on the trail for you.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not campaigning. I'm just selling books.
I realize that, sir. It's unfortunate that you decided to go that route.
Thank you. Isn't it kind of humiliating as a former big shot cabinet minister to be out flogging a book?
No, it isn't, Jack. I expect you to do it someday. You should write about how you rose from rags to riches, a poor Scottish boy that came to this country and bullied his way up to the top.
Bullied? We're talking about being a bully. Oh, name of goodness. My goodness gracious me. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'd like to speak to Mr. Horner.
While he's here. Go ahead.
I farm near Hazar, and I was wondering, since you seem to believe that the oil and gas business is going to come under federal control, do you suppose we, as Albertans, are going to get a better share of some of the other things that we need?
Look, first of all, the oil and gas industry is going to be regulated by both governments. Alberta doesn't suffer. In 1979, Alberta got $4.8 billion from the oil industry. In 1983, under the new budget, Alberta will be getting $9.7 billion from the oil industry. That's not a decrease. Alberta's going to be well off.
And we should be happy with that.
Well, that's quite a bit. I think that those who have money and make money should pay taxes. And the oil industry has made money.
Thank you. A call from Alberta. A
Good.
call from Slave Lake in Alberta. Hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, now, how come you're watching us in Slave Lake?
Well, because Liberal government doesn't allow us anything but the propaganda station up here, CBC. So we have the satellites.
Oh, you've got an illegal Earth station.
And I have a question for Jack Horner. I used to be in his riding at one time.
Good to
And
hear
when
from you.
he said to me, or said over the radio that he supported Trudeau just because he was the prime minister of that office, has he ever read any of Mr. Trudeau's books?
Yes, I've read quite a few of them. I supported the office of Prime Minister, and for that I was prepared to listen to the Prime Minister, not
Well,
prepared
have you
to
read
walk
any of
off.
his books?
Yes, I've read Federalism in Canada, if that's what you're referring to.
And not only his speech in Montreal right after he announced his retirement, that he wanted like a unitary system, more like the United States. He
said
preferred that.
Yeah, he made a reference to one day they might have a kind of presidential system in the country. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
I think there are some things good about the American system and some things bad. I think that we can go part way that way and not all the way. Now, what do I think is good? I think their committee system is good.
He's a very intelligent man.
Yes, I think that too.
To follow that man blindly, well, I think he's as much dangerous as Hitler and Mussolini was.
Well, I don't think he's that dangerous, but I don't think you or I should follow anybody blindly. And I certainly don't, and don't now, and didn't.
I believe you do, because, I mean, after all, we that voted you in there before you switched voted for you in because you were a conservative.
Tell me, do you like Jack
Horner?
Let me ask a question. Do you like Jack Horner now? Do you in Slave Lake, the woman in Slave Lake, do you like him now?
No.
Fine. I don't need your vote now.
How's the weather in Slave Lake?
Beautiful.
How long have you had the Earth station?
Since August.
Well, spread the word of Webster and make sure everybody watches in Alberta.
Okay.
At least in Slave Lake. Jack, I'm going to let you go now.
Thank
You've
you,
been
Jack.
your usual modest, non-provocative self. My thanks to Big Jack Horner. Free plug for his book, $14.95. He needs the money from the book like he needs a hole in the head. And he's on his way to flog it elsewhere. Thank you very much, Jack Horner.
Thank you, Jack.
I'll be back with the former former advisor of one of Nixon's economic advisors, David Henderson, after the break. My guest is David Henderson, economist, and he wants to make a disclaimer over something I said not once but twice in the program. David.
I was an acting senior economist at the Council of Economic Advisors under President Nixon. I was not a direct advisor to President Nixon. I was 22 years old at the time.
Why do you say that? Because you don't want to appear to have been in any kind of touch with that dreadful man at all?
Yes.
Oh. How old are you now, David?
30, last Friday.
There's something very suspicious about your presence on this program. This is the third time I've had guests and discovered that they've had connections with a strange group called the Libertarians.
Ah.
And I see here that you're an advisor to Ed Clark, the Libertarian presidential candidate.
Right. Now, I did talk to him.
And let's do this Libertarian bit thing first. They're kind of right-wing liberals, aren't they?
Maybe, depending on what you mean by that. What they believe is complete freedom for the individual in
How
all
many
areas
votes
of
did
life.
Ed Clark get?
970,000.
Most unfortunate name for anyone running for top office in this country. Ed Clark. 970,000 votes.
Right.
That's a spit in a bucket.
1.2%.
1.2%. Give me a little bit of the libertarian thing. You say that again?
We believe in freedom for the individual in all areas, not just in the economic area, but also in the area of civil liberties, the right to use anything you want, any kind of food or drug or anything you want to ingest into your own body, the right not to be drafted into the military, the right not to be forced to fight in a foreign war, and so on.
I don't like that.
No?
That's
Which part?
Anarchy.
If you mean by anarchy a completely voluntary society, then many libertarians are anarchists in that sense. The usual image of anarchy is a society in which people throw bombs, and that's exactly what we're against.
No, I don't. I mean, a totally free society would become anarchical in very short time if there was no compulsion for people to conform to certain standards of law or certain standards of behavior.
Libertarians believe in law. They believe that when you say that someone has the right to do something, you mean they should be protected in their doing it. So to say that you have the right to be on this show means that if someone tries to come along and forcibly remove you, you have the right to call the law in and
Oh, my boss can remove me any time I'm not a success.
No, he wouldn't forcibly do it. I'm saying if someone comes in off the street and just tries to haul you out of here, you would be protected.
They can't do that now.
I know, because of the law, and we believe in the law that says you can't do that.
Do you believe in property rights?
Yes, very definitely.
Do you believe in punishment of an individual who breaks the law?
Yes, depending on the law.
But
If he breaks a law that protects other people, yes.
But, I mean, if you want to become a junkie and get heroin, you've no objection to that?
I have no objection to someone's right to do that. I may object to his doing it, but that's a separate issue. And in fact, if you look at most codes of behavior we have, Christianity, Judaism, and so on, they are not enforced by law. They are things that people arrive at voluntarily, and they work pretty well in their effects.
Enforced by its standards of moral behavior.
That's right.
A little bit idealistic, though, is it not, in today's society, to say, okay, we're going to make pot and hash and elephant stick and heroin and whatever, out on the counter, my right is to sell it to whomsoever I please, whether they're 9, 10, 11, or 55.
Well, I'm glad you say it's idealistic. I mean, that, I think, to the extent...
Naive, I should say.
Well,
simple-minded,
if I could stick with what you first said...
No, I've withdrawn. Delete that from the tape altogether. I didn't say that.
Well, but see, I don't see that as really the guts of the message. I mean, sure, that's part of our views, but there are just all kinds of things going on now. The government takes almost half of our income, and we don't get to choose how to spend it. There are a lot of things going on that are very important.
You're the
that
economist.
doing.
Why does the government take half of income, idealistically speaking?
They don't do it idealistically speaking. It's true that they appeal to certain people's ideals about helping other people, and they really cash in on that. But they do it often because people don't understand how they're doing it. For instance, the woman on this morning talked about how we want to guarantee all these pensions and so on. We want to have these much bigger pensions provided by the government. And as you pointed out, you have to tax people to do that. You have to, and if you're not going to tax people directly, you have to print money to do that. And she was talking as if somehow this inflation problem that we have with private pensions is something that they're going to set to solve. And in fact, the problem is caused by the Canadian government, because they're the ones who are printing the money which is causing the inflation.
Can they solve the inflation problem?
They can in a technical sense. They can cut the growth of the money supply, and the result will be a lower level of price increase. If they cut the level of money supply growth to zero, the result would be no inflation at all. Whether they will is a separate question.
But why would they not do that? There's the answer. I know that myself, I think, having heard it so often, that if you cut the money supply's growth, inflation will cease.
Right.
There's no more money to chase the goods.
Right.
But what's the economic effect of that on the ordinary American or Canadian?
That their pension is more secure, that their savings are not indirectly taxed through inflation, that they can plan better for the future.
But there is also mass unemployment.
There will be a short-run increase in unemployment. There are ways you could get rid of that problem, or at least ameliorate the problem. For instance, by getting rid of a lot of the labor market restrictions that keep people out of work, by getting rid of the minimum wage.
Like trade unions?
Trade unions, no, not getting rid of trade unions, getting rid of the power trade unions have to force people to join against their will.
That's another of your basic facts. What was the other thing you said just now?
Getting rid of the minimum wage. The minimum wage, which is now over $3 an hour in Canada, prices a lot of low-skilled people out of the market because employers are not willing to pay them that wage because they can't get that much on what they produce.
You are the direct antithesis to today's capital L liberal in Canada, who in fact is an egalitarian bureaucratic socialist.
It's a funny kind of egalitarianism that prices the poorest people out of the labor market, and instead of giving them, say, $2 an hour, gives them $0 an hour because they don't get work.
What do you think of the Canadian policy adopted and enforced by the federal government, whereby we are subsidizing our internal price of oil to half the world market?
I think it's a crazy policy. I'm not on this taking Lougheed's side. I think that the debate between Lougheed and Lalonde and Trudeau is like the debate between Bugs Moran and Al Capone. They both want to tax private people, and I say they have no right to do that.
What would you do with social services? Would you let social services, compensation, Medicare or Medicaid as you have in the States, would you just let that wind down to a generally acceptable level?
I would let it wind down gradually. At the same time, I would have, I'm not running things, but these are my ideals. I would have the government get out of a lot of things, a lot of programs that are hurting the poor, and so that therefore, at the same time, they're losing certain benefits. They don't lose everything because now they can work, it's easier to get jobs, and so on.
Where do you practice?
And they can keep more of the money.
You come from Manitoba, I know, originally, but where do you work now?
At the University of Santa Clara in California.
In California.
Right.
You have a very good quote in front of me about politics.
I do?
Mm-hmm. Politics?
Oh, okay, let me tell you, I'll give you the quote. Politics represents the art of calculated cheating. Now that is a quote that I quoted from a very well-known U.S. government official, and it goes on to say that, well, I can't replicate the quote, but in any case, the person who said this is James Schlesinger, who used to be the Energy Secretary and the Defense Secretary, and this was from an article he wrote 12 years ago in which he pointed out the nature of the political game, that the idea is to tax people with as little pain as possible so they don't even know you're taxing them, and to distribute the proceeds to the various special interests who come to Ottawa to get them.
Well, that, of course, is exactly what politics is.
Right.
To redistribute wealth, to maintain political and economic power in the country.
That's right.
Would you not agree with me on that?
That's right.
Do you think that the Americans will become oil self-sufficient, or do you think that the Iran situation was somehow or other contrived by deliberation?
No, I don't think, I think neither will the Americans will not become self-sufficient just because we don't have that much oil. They will become more self-sufficient than they are now. I don't think the Iranian situation was contrived in the sense that that's an internal political matter in Iran, and neither the American government nor the Soviet government has the power to run the world, and there are a lot of things, contrary to Reagan's view, that are going wrong in the world, not due to the Russians or the Americans.
David Henderson, I apologize for only having such a short interview,
That's
but
all
I'll
right.
point out again that you're a Libertarian presidential candidate advisor.
Right.
Strange kind of peaceful anarchists. My thanks. I'll
Thank
be
you.
back after the break. Did you notice one question I missed on Jack Horner?
You missed one?
Yes, I missed
The
one.
first time ever.
What did he really think of Webster? I would have hated to have got the answer from him. He'd have cut me into little blobs of fat. Monday morning, 9 a.m. precisely. This is the press room for all the old horses of the media. Surrounded by stables, and boy, does it smell like an old stable.
What I'm trying to find out is who let you out of the stables last night.
You mean the press room stables?
Yeah.
I think this convention is a disgrace to the media facilities are disgraceful, and that you gentlemen should apologize. Yours truly drove in Murchie's Instant People's Car. Low gas mileage, gas or natural gas. Low cost. And there I am hitting the doorpost. The first accident in Murchie 1. The very first, I have now stuck it on the doorpost. I'm now going to attempt to get out of the Murch 1. It ain't going to be easy.
Beautiful. Beautiful,
Yes, well
Jack.
done.
Very good. You don't have to eat it all, Jack. No, Jack, please.
Is it